Okay, let's get started. Go ahead and move to the next slide and we'll start the recording. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first Move Forward with Mobile Learning webinars. This is part of a series that supports a long-term launch of our new mobile learning resource, our mLearning website. I'm Jen Vanek. I am here with colleagues from the EdTech Center at World Ed. And we're all here because about a year ago, we were working hard to wrap up our participation and leadership in the Adult Literacy X Prize Communities Competition, Team World Ed. Team World Ed had the best performance in Tier 1. I think Tier 1 was the biggest tier. And we used the prize money from that effort to create a community of practice to support mobile learning initiatives in programs that serve adults with basic skill needs across the country. So we invited all of the leading teams from the other tiers to all come together, and with the goal of taking our shared expertise, shared knowledge, and all of the resources that our members and their networked organizations used to support their success with mobile learning during the X Prize Communities Competition. So that's what our website is, and this is the way we're going to be introducing it to you. We're going to introduce each of the different areas of implementation, along with resources that percolated to the top as being really interesting during the competition. So now I'd like to introduce my colleague, Ebony Vandross, who's going to give you some tips about how to participate in this webinar.
Thanks, Jen. Hey, everybody, welcome. For those of you that are not familiar with Zoom, the slide just has some information on the basic controls. The control bar can be found at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and you might need to hover your mouse down there to make it pop up. You can access the chat in that same control bar. The chat icon is highlighted in red. And just make sure that when you make comments or ask questions, you select everyone from the drop-down menu so that your comments or questions are seen by everyone and not just the hosts. You can access the non-verbal control panel under the participant window, and that has some hand raise feature so that if you are having some issues, you can get my attention by raising your hand if I don't see your comment posted in the chat. And if there's any other questions, please email me at the email address down below. Thank you.
Thanks, Ebony. So today, this is our agenda. We are going to say a little bit more along the way about the mLearning initiative and the leadership team members who are here. Victoria is going to lead us through a tour of the website, focusing on the topic of today, which is onboarding. We will have presentations on onboarding, that is bringing learners into an app and an educational opportunity, from Xavier Munoz from the Literacy Council of Northern Virginia, Kathleen O'Connell from World Education, and Jessica Rothenberg-Aalami from Cell Ed. I'm joined on this call by my colleagues from World Ed, Ebony Vandross and Victoria Neff, and we also have 3 facilitators who are going to respond to each of our presenters, Sherry Lehane, Jacqueline Chernobyl, and Kristen Hempel. All 3 were participants in Team World Ed during the X Prize Communities Competition, and they are part of a group of about 25 mobile learning leaders across the country who are part of the mLearning leadership team and help guide this community of practice going forward. So now I'm going to turn it over to Victoria, who will give us a tour of the website.
Thanks, Jen. Can everyone hear me great? So the first thing that I just wanted to remind folks before I do a site preview is that we will be leading these webinars on a monthly basis. When you signed up and registered through Zoom for the webinar, you will have received those dates. We may change the dates as we find out about folks' availability and when the best timing is, but know that the Zoom meeting that you've already registered for will automatically update. So there's nothing more that you need to do, and we'll definitely send out an email and notify you with any of those changes. So stay tuned for the topic of our next webinar. It will be on one of those 4 implementation areas. And we'd love to hear from you based off of your work and your needs, what area you're most interested in learning more about. And we can prioritize that in our next webinar and for future webinars. So without further ado, I am going to just do a really quick site preview for those of you who have not seen our site yet. If you just head over to edtech.worlded.org, you'll see a little tab at the top labeled mLearning. And if you click on that, that's going to bring you to this landing page for our mLearning Resource Hub. The first part of this site, this first page, is some context, a bit about how the site is laid out and how the resources are organized. So you'll see here those 4 key areas: outreach, onboarding, instructional support, and evaluating apps. Underneath here is an important link that I want to call out your attention to. So that's the mLearning, submit your mLearning resource here. And when you click on that, that's going to bring you to this JOT form to submit a mobile learning resource. That might be a tool or you know, some sort of guidance document template that you use in your work, whatever it may be. So please, we encourage you to submit your resources to us, and we will do our best to integrate them into our site. You can read more about the different activities, the history that Jen had already mentioned earlier. You can also check out who is on our leadership team here and see more about the mLearning leadership team members. The next thing that I wanted to call out your attention to is how to get to the resources. So there's 2 ways. You can either use the left side nav right here, or you can click on the icon to go to a specific section. Once you click on that, it will bring you to the resources for that particular implementation area. So you'll see here all of the implementation resources for mLearning onboarding. Some of these will actually be presenting on today. For example, the digital literacy skill assessment, self-assessment tool. Kathleen will be talking about her work to adapt that tool to for remote onboarding and the work she's done with that. The other thing that I want to point out is for each resource, there will be a Get Resource button, which you'll click, and it will bring you to that specific resource. So this is just a short webinar clip that we took from a previous presentation. Some of the resources are clips, and some are Word documents that you can get and just press allow, and you know that will be an automatic download, and you'll get that resource. The other thing that I want to mention is we have listed out connected resources. So if there's any other work or relevant resources that are helpful in understanding how you might use this specific tool, you can click on those connected resources. The last thing that I want to point out is that each of the mLearning resources has a comment feature. So what we would love to do, what we would love you to do is, if you've used a resource or you have you know of a blog post or another resource that may be connected, whatever it may be, submit your comment. Let us know what your feedback is. And we'd love to just hear from you. How did you use this tool? Was it helpful? Why or why not? So we want to hear from you. And please let us know what you think by using this feature to share any comments or feedback. The final thing that I'll point out is that we do have this professional development calendar, which has this webinar series, and other webinar series, and events and professional development opportunities from our partners. So feel free to check out that and see what else we have on the horizon for learning opportunities. So with that, I'm going to go back to our presentation. And again, the two key things are you can comment on resources with ideas, feedback, anything. We'd love to hear from you. If you have a resource, please submit your resource. You can do that by clicking on that link that's on that first landing page. And that's what the mobile learning resource submission looks like. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Xavier from the Literacy Council of Northern Virginia to present on his work. And Xavier, just let me know when you're ready to advance, and I'll do that for you.
Great. Thank you very much, Victoria. Hello, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be with you all today. There's a lot of LCNV staff and teachers actually participating too. So questions, put them in the chat, and some of my colleagues can probably answer as I'm talking. My role, I had the pleasure of supervising teachers and supporting our professional development and professional learning opportunities towards standards-based instruction. And I also help coordinate our students' use of CEL-Ed, which we've been using since 2017, and with whom we're really delighted to partner. Next slide, please. So let me tell you a little bit about our context at LCNV and where we were at when COVID-19 related closures hit us. So the mission of the Literacy Council of Northern Virginia is to teach adults the basic skills of reading, writing, speaking, and understanding English so they can access employment and educational opportunities and more fully and equitably participate in the community. So in any given year, we're serving about 1,500 learners from more than 70 different countries, speaking more than 40 different languages, the vast majority being women. About a third or so have 9 or fewer years of prior formal schooling. And we do it with 15 staff, about 15 to 20 paid teachers, and hundreds of volunteers. So we have a lot of different classroom programs. And when, March 12th, March 16th, when in Northern Virginia, the COVID-19 really caused buildings and offices to close, most of our classes were in the middle of their spring semester. And as you can see in some of these photos, we really pride ourselves on having a culture of nice and having a space that's joyous and happy and is celebratory, whether it's potluck celebrations at the end of the semester or having our students sit in on naturalization ceremonies that we host. It's a really happy affair, but undoubtedly with the coronavirus, that all changed. So since April, we've been able to provide instruction that's tailored to students' technological and time restrictions. So for some students who have internet and computer access, we've been able to provide teacher-led online instruction using Zoom or WhatsApp. For those that just have cell phone access, we're working on onboarding them to CEL-Ed and USA Learns and some other mobile learning options that are approved in our state for reporting hours for federal dollars. And for those that only have voice capabilities on their phone, we're working on connecting those students with one-to-one volunteers so they can get some supplemental tutoring, as it were, during these difficult times. So in total, across these different ways that we've been reaching students, we've thankfully been able to continue serving about 75% or around 300 or so of those students that enrolled with us in January when they were hoping for a full semester's worth of in-person classes. So the way that we've transitioned helped support our teachers to do teacher-led classes on Zoom and WhatsApp has taken some time. I'm not going to spend this webinar to talk about that. More, that 25%, those students who aren't yet connected with us, that's what I want to focus on. How are we working to reach them? So if you can go to the next slide, please. The Literacy Council of Northern Virginia has had a history of mobile learning and partnering with mobile learning organizations and companies. And back during the X Prize Communities competition last year, we had a lot of our volunteers and teachers joining us to follow very much this kind of onboarding process that you see on your screen, and is one of the onboarding resources in the mLearning Resource Hub website. So at that time, our process was, you could call it ESL, engage staff, volunteers, and paid teachers, scaffold the onboarding process, both for staff and teachers, and then for students, and launch sign-up parties. So we've been able to follow a similar process, but of course, things have changed. And next slide, please. So if you're a fan of Hamilton, you can think of The World Turned Upside Down, that song. As the world is turned upside down because of the coronavirus, we have shifted our process a little bit in terms of how we remotely onboard students whom we can't connect with over Zoom or over WhatsApp through their teacher, but instead just by phone or text or email, we're trying to onboard them. So our process basically has been to learn the tool, connect with students, navigate the sign up, and verify success. And I'll kind of talk about each of those in step, and I'll leave some mystery for the Q&A that Sherry will facilitate afterward. So for learning the tool, the way that we've done that, right, we've had some teachers who are doing teacher-led classes, other teachers who couldn't. So we've used this as an opportunity to bring on additional volunteers, some who are brand new to our organization, some who haven't been involved with us for some time, or others who can't commit to Zoom or WhatsApp classes, but do want to help connect with their students and help them take advantage of a mobile learning instructional opportunity. So to learn the tool with our volunteers and instructors, we've asked them to try it out themselves. Sign up for your own student account on USA Learns, for instance. Follow these simple guides or tutorials that we've written up, or used various screencasting tools to create. Really experience what it would be like from the student's perspective, either on a computer, tablet, or smartphone, to sign up for this thing, because often that part is the challenge, not so much using the tool, but actually the onboarding piece, how to sign up. So as our volunteers have learned the tool, then we connect them with students. And for each volunteer, we found that about 10 to 12 students, assigning them has been a good number. It's not too many, but it's enough that they feel really helpful, and that they're providing a lot of benefit. And so with connecting them with students, like I said, some of these volunteers, they're brand new to our organization. They've never worked with these students before. They don't have the benefit of an in-person relationship to build upon. So failing that, that's where we've provided a script for our volunteers, having some structure that they can feel comfortable walking into. Use the script that when you're calling, that you can introduce yourself, explain why you're calling, explain about this opportunity, or you can send it by text or send it by email. But really prioritizing the relationships we found to be important, both in establishing at first and building as check-ins continue to happen. So then as that relationship is beginning to form, the next part is the navigating the sign up. So some of the tools and strategies that we've used for that is, yes, for sure, to encourage and use students' own languages. At this time, English should not be the barrier for getting them connected to some sort of self-paced or asynchronous mobile learning option. So we've done that through translation tools, through recruiting bilingual volunteers and having them call Vietnamese speakers or Korean speakers, those students that our staff, for whom our staff don't speak their same language. And with that, we tried using some really interesting ed tech tools like Wakelet to write out the steps for signing up. And within that tool with Wakelet, you can have text be translated into many other languages and be read aloud so that you can hear it if you aren't able to read it. But what we found is that it helps to go with what's familiar. We're connecting them with something that's new. So if they're often already familiar with Google Translate or some other translation tool, both the students and the volunteers, it's actually been more effective for them to go with that. It's already something that they know. And then as part of that sign up process, we encourage volunteers, if they can, to do a lesson together, if possible, with the student. Either just sit with them on the phone as they go through it, or schedule a separate time to go through some lessons together. And that leads into the verifying success, that we do ask the volunteers to check back in. If they've successfully signed up, try to contact them on a weekly basis, just to have that friendly reminder that we hope that you're continuing to use it to study as often as you can. and that we're here. If you have questions, let us know. And also too, for us as an organization, using certain tools that we can report hours on, one of the challenges that we've found is making sure that students use our organization code. With something like USA Learns, that's not an automatic step. You can start a class and never enroll in an organization or teacher's class. So we've had to kind of go back, which has been a nice opportunity to check back in with students. And then through that process, the relationship has often flourished. Sometimes the volunteers have found that the student really wants to keep connected with them, and that it's not just coming from the volunteer and the organization. And certainly with verifying, it's also revising our process too. What's more support that we could provide for volunteers and students to make this go more smoothly? So next slide, please. So this just recaps some of the things that we found to have worked, and this list will, I'm sure, continue to grow. Many of these tips, in fact, are also highlighted in other resources on the mLearning Resource Hub, in the tips for onboarding remote learners, and in a previous webinar that the EdTech Center held on April 10th. But I think it always helps to hear from other organizations, community-based ones like LCNV and other kinds of schools, to hear that, yes, using clear and simple instructions really matters. The relationship is key. In times like these, it's a really important and valuable opportunity to recruit bilingual volunteers while providing structure so that for volunteers, they can step in and very quickly get going. So with that, I have left many things for you to ask me about, but I appreciate this opportunity to present a little bit on how we've tried to connect with those students, again, that we couldn't get onto Zoom or WhatsApp classes for one reason or another. So with that, I'm happy to pass it off to Sherry for the Q&A.
Thank you, Xavier.
Thank you, Xavier. So Xavier, we have a question from Jackie Aguilera. She said many of their students have government issued phones with limited data access and capability. Are you encountering similar challenges of phone capability, and how are you helping these students?
Yeah, so we've, and I encourage my colleagues in the chat to also share some responses. We have encountered some students that maybe not with a government issued phone, but maybe they have a month-to-month kind of plan. And so when we call them, it says the phone's out of service, or they don't have a voicemail set up. And one of the reasons why we've used CellEd since 2017 is that it can be used on any device, even if you can only call in and use voice and text. So we're pretty used to students not being able to answer us that first time. So one thing that we found that helps is just put them on the list, make a note. We called on this day. We weren't able to reach them, but we'll try to call back later, maybe the next week, maybe the next month. For us, it's we haven't been able to solve all those issues, and we're in the state of Virginia. We talk with a lot of other programs regionally and across the state about how to tap into our community partners to get across that digital equity issue of the technology access. But that's a little bit of what we've experienced so far.
And Carol added that for CellEd, they also have access to live coaches.
Right.
Xavier, are you finding that students are using that resource quite a bit? Are you able to gauge that at all?
With our partnership with CellEd, we do have an account that gives us access to the portal or the learning management system, where we can message students directly. We can see message exchanges going back and forth between coaches and students. And I can't speak to the percentage, but I know that many students have gotten help from their coaches, if nothing else through text, but I'm sure through the phone as well, to change course or change level, or even to share successes that, just last year, a student in one of our workplace ESL classes got a promotion and thanked CellEd in part for that success. So it does seem to be a support service that CellEd offers that really has meant a lot for our students.
Great, thank you. There's been several requests for you to share the script for volunteers, and I see that one of your colleagues has responded that they would, so I'll leave it to the EdTech Center to let everybody know where that would be posted. Someone asked if, hold on just a minute. Whoops, sorry. Do you have a sample role description for the volunteers that you're using to onboard and check in with students?
I think we do, but our volunteer coordinator is on this call, and if she doesn't answer in the text in the chat, I will touch base with her afterward and then circle back to the EdTech Center. Yeah, for most of our standard volunteer roles, we do have descriptions already written up. You know, in these times, we're trying to innovate while also help document and have that clear process or make it as we go. So I'll touch base with her and get back to you all. Great.
And Monica has asked, can you expand on the topic about providing structure to enhance volunteer success?
Sure. So in terms of structure, one thing that I think about is the use of those scripts. You know, many of our volunteers come to us without necessarily having had teaching experience or experience working with adults who are learning English. And, you know, when you've taught adult ESL classes, one thing that you find is the importance of simplifying the language and not just kind of speaking as if you were talking with someone who is also very, very proficient in English. So that script has been one way, but also it's, you know, having guides and tutorials written up. Here's this mobile learning option that we'd like you to promote to students. Here's some information for you to learn about this tool, this resource that we've already kind of curated, rather than saying, okay, we want to go with this one and that one. Can you spend some time, our volunteer, researching it and spend, you know, an hour or so and then reach out to the student? But rather, we've spent some of that pre-time researching and distilling what we feel to be the essence or the most important features about those apps.
Great, thank you so much. So please, everyone, you can continue to put your questions to Xavier in the chat, and the EdTech Center will be sure to address them and communicate them to you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sherry and Xavier. That was great. So next we're going to hear from Kathleen O'Connell, my colleague at World Education. So I'm going to let her take it away. Kathleen, let me know when you're ready to advance.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here today. I am currently the Workplace Education Coordinator at World Education, and I also coordinated the English Now Learning Circles project, and I will be talking a bit about that today. Can you move forward? Yeah, so today I'm going to highlight this really great onboarding tool that you can find on the mLearning website. It's a digital literacy self-assessment tool. So it's a survey, you know, that asks you about the hardware you have, how often you use it, and how comfortable you are, say, using email or using WhatsApp or things like that. So I hope you can take some time to look more closely at this tool. I think it's one that can be used now in today's remote learning setting. And so I'm going to talk about a couple of ways that I've thought of, but first I'm going to start describing how people in the learning circles used it. So you see here is, I just love this picture here. You see the learner sitting in a lab, but learning on her phone. So the learners in the learning circles did both. So let me back up a second though and mention the project. It was the English Now project, and there are resources also linked on the mLearning website. I think Victoria Jen is going to chat those for you. So the learning circles, the round last year in 2019 were with 10 programs, and the aim was to increase access to learning English. So it was mostly it was for people that were waiting for classes. So it was in 3 different parts. There was a check-in section, kind of, you know, brief, kind of everyone kind of talk and find out how they were doing. And then the second section, which was really the meat of it, was the English learning section. So in the first round, almost everybody was using computers of some sort. And then in the second round, we went over to apps. So it was really important for programs to know more about the learner's digital skills. So we used the digital skills assessment. So you can see on the slide there, programs then sort of learned from the learners what it was that they felt was the most important thing that they learned during these sessions. So programs use the tool in several ways. They used it right from the start as a baseline to find out what people knew, and they also, if you saw from the early slide, it's a Word document. So, you can modify it in any way you see fit, and programs certainly did that. They came up with all sorts of ways to use it. It was a great tool in class, and I was thinking that this would be something that if you are teaching in a Zoom classroom, you might be able to use this tool and use it as a springboard to find out more about what people know and what people are comfortable with. And also, if you are, for instance, you're having people go off on their own and using apps, you can use it that way to find out more about what people can do using apps. Next slide. So this was very much used, I think, in all of the English Now programs as a pre and post assessment tool. So it's useful, not only for the learners to see what their gains are, but also helpful, for further funding of your project. I used it in my workplace education class, and then with the results, which were really great, people felt like they, had not only gained computer skills, but using apps like CellEd. But so the workplace really liked hearing about the gains in digital skills. As you know, in almost all workplaces these days, there's some kind of digital skills that people need to know. So this is another way that you could potentially use this forum. Next slide. So in the second round, all of the English Now programs were using the X Prize apps. So I think most people here are familiar with the Adult Literacy X Prize Communities Competition. And so what programs did was they took the digital skills assessment tool and made it just completely about apps. So adding questions about what kind of phone do you have, Android phone, iPhone, do you know how to install an app from the App Store? Do you know how to connect to Wi-Fi? And also, have you used your phone for learning English? And so what they were able to do with that was find out which of the learners really felt comfortable downloading apps. And then those learners then they paired them up with a learner who was not comfortable. So that was a really great way to kind of pair up learners for some peer support and learning. So that too, I think, is something that we could think about now. So say you finally get all of your learners on Zoom. This is in a classroom setting. But you're also thinking that maybe down the road you want them on apps so they could spend more time using apps to learn. Then you could potentially pair up some of the students to help each other with that. Next slide, please. So now on to our current reality of COVID. So I am going to talk a little bit about a new workplace program that I've been trying to get going. We were supposed to get started actually the week that our state, Massachusetts, shut down. So I had met most of the students. I had a list of students. I knew which ones had phones. But that list was at this point about 6 months old, because we did that pre-work, you know, in the fall. So I was thinking, okay, so how do I move people on, you know? So my thought was going back, you know, to using paper. So people are all at the workplace. This is an essential business. And so I came up with a very simple form, just your name. Would you like to take classes? Would you be willing for the teacher to call you? And are you on WhatsApp? And can the teacher contact you that way? So anyway, so that's how we're starting that. And then I think once we're on WhatsApp and hopefully eventually onto Zoom, then we will look again at this form and find out more about students, and putting the form into Google Forms. Google Forms is great. You can just send out a link via text, and the students don't need an app then to fill out that form. So I hope that those of you who have used this form will add any ways that you've used it onto the website in the comment box, and yeah, so that's it. I hope I can share more later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Jacqueline is going to take over the Q&A now.
Great. Thanks so much, Kathleen. We didn't actually have any questions in the chat, but I had a question for you. Was interested in the English Now Learning Circles. Did the results of the survey impact the technology that was used for the program, or was it more of a diagnostic that was used to identify needed training for participants?
Oh, that's a really good question. It was a diagnostic, really, because programs, you know, they didn't have much choice of what they were going to use. You know, some had a formal lab to use, and others were using Chromebooks. So yeah, but there was one case, I think, where they found out, well, especially during round 2, there were classes that decided just to use phones because everybody had a phone.
Okay, great. And I think we're short on time, so
Yeah,
I think we will move it along to the next, since we didn't have any other questions from the chat.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Kathleen and Jacqueline. And if any other questions come up, feel free to chat those at any time. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jessica from CELED to share more on CELED's work and their learnings from remote onboarding.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Thank you. That was incredible. Really appreciated hearing a little bit more from Kathleen and Xavier. And I wanted to start with gratitude. Working with Kathleen, Xavier, and not only the teams at LCNV and World Education and others, it's really why CELED is here, working together to design with you and hopefully getting closer to meeting our learner needs, essentially one learner at a time. I'm Dr. Jessica Rothenberg-Aalami, the CEO and founder of CELED, if we haven't had a chance to connect. And I'm proud to represent a dynamic team of teachers and community advocates, and also mobile learning and technologists who are passionate about bridging essential skills divides we all face. Just for so many, in fact, over half the population in the US, those divides actually are the gap between having access to livelihood and opportunity and not. Next slide. And under COVID-19, March 19th, what we had been talking about for a long time at CELED for the last 5 years and before as researchers and practitioners are a lot of the hidden epidemics that so many folks are low literate, who are hardworking adults and family members. So many people do not have access to digital literacy and other programs. And after this March period of time, those hidden epidemics are no longer hidden. And if over 44% of families don't have internet, well, how are they going to get access to remote learning opportunities? And with less than 1% designed for the need, unfortunately, it's really creating kind of a disaster, if you will. So our shared responsibility in terms of CELED and all our program partners are how can we reach the scale of need immediately? Next slide, please. So we essentially work together to train, engage, and ultimately certify folks over any mobile device. For those of you who haven't met us yet, and we do this with these 3-minute micro lessons that are engaging and with two-way confirmed understanding of our messaging, we will lead to a certificate and other skill gains. It's 100% remote, and we pair everyone with a bilingual or multilingual coach to provide that individualized learning support. Next slide, please. The key to the puzzle is that we actually started as a call-in option without internet over feature phones back in 2014, because there was really this incredible need to not provide access that relied on internet and a lengthy time online in some ways for folks who were really busy. So what could we do with those 3 minutes? And if we could make it available on a feature phone and design from there. And we've learned a lot over the years and have iterated quite a bit every quarter or so. You hopefully, based on your feedback, have seen improvements not only in product and service, but additional programming. What's key now is since March, we've been adding some additional ways to become more universally accessible. So aside from being able to call into game programming, easier access on an app to get into programming and surf between options, we've launched our WhatsApp version, so folks can also gain access to our full programming there. We are also available as a hotline in some states without a PIN code. And I'll explain why as part of our next initiative. And now as a push text, for those who've opted in, we can reach hundreds of thousands of families as well, let them know the service is available to them, and they can begin programming immediately. All right, next slide, please. So I wanted to bring in some onboarding examples because this is part of the fun, making multiple options available to not only learners, but to program partners is really how we can improve programming and engagement, because no two learners are alike, no two program partners are alike, and in field and on the ground, context matters. So what we found is over recent times and ongoing, lots of different strategies for onboarding that we can provide when we start working together. One of them, as I was saying again, the oldest way you could have used CELED is now proving to be the most accessible way again under COVID-19. If you just simply call in on a phone, if it's a smartphone, a feature phone or other, you can gain access to programming as a learner. This is now offered in multiple languages because we added new programming under COVID-19 in March, and now we have enhanced programming around COVID-19. Specifically, the information people need to stay safe is not accessible. Most programming is still written at 8th grade or above. In the case of the World Health Organization, college level or level 5 reading. If most people are struggling and reading at below a 6th grade level, this is continually a challenge. So we've made that available over audio, two-way texting, a few different languages. We'll keep adding languages, and that's free to anyone now globally. Next one is a statewide hotline I mentioned to you in some cases of program partners. What if you could just call in and figure out the phone number without a PIN code, and then you can get in right away? Well, that removes a program partner that you'd have to get the PIN code from. That removes other barriers that have been potentially a couple of steps in between a learner and access to remote learning. So that's available now as well. We're just launched that today, in fact. And then WhatsApp I mentioned to reach. This has been really exciting because WhatsApp can be used in so many ways, not only for programming, but for sharing, getting groups together. So we're starting to see a lot of other programs that are absolutely utilizing this. That one launched also just this month. We're also finding a demand for video. So even we get feedback from every learner. This is the greatest privilege we have at CELED. Learners get back to us by texting in the program, outside of it with the connection with their coach. And so what we do is we get feedback. So sometimes they're saying, I'd love to chat with another group or somebody in my sphere, or a program partner pulls together a group that then our coaches then will have a session. So remotely, we've been doing more sessions with our coaches and program groups. So that's been really exciting to see. So utilizing some other best practices from partners that you've heard from here, we're able to start learning from as well. We mentioned that we are push texting to households. This is very exciting for us to be able to try, especially given some of the needs for folks that just didn't know programming was there. We'll let you know how that goes since that just also launched this week. And then this idea that we can offer the customizing, that often for a trusted partner who's been local or even a national one that's been providing service to date, it's the look and feel of their program partner we're able to do now, and even the app. Do reach out if that's of interest. Sometimes that has also minimized the barrier to remote learning for populations who really trust the providers they know and love, and they just needed a mobile arm to deliver excellent programming. This is the last one. Because of the demand was so great, we had even learners reach out asking for access, and to date we have been program driven, so partners will utilize CELED and make it available. So we work with partners who then make it available to their students, their learners in blended or other. Now it's direct to learner. We are offering ability as of today. We launched a new initiative which I'm really excited to announce here with World Education Partners and others, that we do have a CELED 1 Million Learner Challenge where we're offering CELED free programming to any vulnerable end user directly for the year. So if you go to the next slide, I can announce that, the official launch. Everyone, hello. CELED's 1 Million Learner Challenge. Together we can reach, teach, and elevate 1 million learners who've not been served to date. They will have access. Next slide.
No.
Oh, the formatting. I wondered if that would happen in the slides. It looks different on my screen, but forgive the formatting. We'll be able to get that too in PDF form. But this is essentially access to our foundational essential skills programming, also our work readiness programming, our skill builder programming, and our access to life coaches, again, that lead to certificates and other program options. And it's easy to access is the goal here. Again, in same CELED, just available to end user for free.
Jess,
Right,
I can pull up your Google Slides if you're okay with that. Just might take a second.
No problem. Although this is interpretive, like this is the flexibility. You know, you can see some of it, but there's more slides. And actually, with the onboarding, if you choose to join us in partnership on this, you'll get all this through the email once you sign up. All of the materials for sharing. Sharing is caring. It will be available to you to make it available to learners in your network. Great, and I'll see if there's any questions on that? Well, there it is. Now you can read it. And again, you've heard it all here and you live it. So you understand how many vulnerable learners and families there are in the US. We know that over half aren't getting access to accurate information. We also know the digital divides, opportunity divides are even steeper. So how can we make that available for free to end users immediately? That launches today. That's the goal. Great, thank you. Excellent, thank you. So that's also available. So we're reaching, again, anyone. So often those who we've been privileged to support and work together with and learn from to date have been new Americans, immigrants, folks who are working multiple jobs, juggling so much. So we'll continue to do that. And those who are especially now out of work, we can also provide programming to families. Universal access, again, I just mentioned to you how that works. So let's continue to keep offering that. We just believe you should meet every learner where they're at, regardless of device, and they switch between them. So make sure that your programming can be available in that way. We continue to push the innovation envelope there. And again, with these 3-minute micro lessons, hopefully you'll be able to gain the skills you need on your terms. Stackable, that's key, aligned with national and other standards so that this is a relevant certificate. We would provide some background information and also a bit more about how we have created those programs. We also offer a program partner content. All right, and then in this case, relevant. So in that 3-minute lesson, we found that navigating daily life is so challenging that if those lessons not only teach English or pathway to citizenship or work readiness, but also integrate essential digital literacy, communication skills, health literacy, financial literacy, if those get embedded within a 3-minute engaging lesson, you can save a lot of time and give the tips and tricks that are necessary and have been asked for. And so hopefully that's the experience our learners continue to have using a solid course. And again, they're aligned. So here's some of the content, just for those of you who haven't worked with us to date, that this is some of the content that our current program partners will have access to, of course, but also for new program partners who are offering this direct to learner. COVID-19 programming, our English on the Go series. I'll talk about our English language learning program, reading and writing, work ready skills, math for daily life, and US citizenship. So next slide. All right, so right away, this is a 4-part series that launched actually in response to our first version that came out in March. That was a call-in in English and Spanish. This one is now multiple languages, and we're continuing to add to the program. So this is available so that our communities stay safe and get the information they need. It is aligned, again, with World Health Organization and the CDC. In this case, yours will not link to the New York State Department of Health Resources, but will link to CDC and other resources to continually update that information. And then we have signs and symptoms we're talking about, also breaking the myths in this new version, and then managing stress and with health and wellness coaching. All right, next slide. And then for English on the Go. So English on the Go is one of our most popular programs. Again, from no English level to advanced, you can gain at a level around 20 to 25 hours per level. You'll spend on CELED about 1/6 of the time it would take you in a full year course. And we have a track for no English level learners for Spanish, and we're in development with other second languages for that if they really truly have no English language learning. All right, next slide. Skill Builder series, and this is a pre-high school equivalency series, but also some of the fundamentals, even how to read in your first language of English or Spanish. Writing, we have our Math for Life series, a social studies, and a civics and a citizenship program. All right, and then work ready skills. This one is, let's say you get into, and you've been a second language learner or other English pathway program, you're coming into the program. This is at a level 3 of our English language learner. You could pathway in our native English speakers. It's based on a scan that we had done around the key competencies and workforce skills demanded by not only employers, but from these frameworks that we had analyzed, along with the learning we have had over the last 5 to 7 years in this work, combine that into this 10-part series. We're also developing a couple more versions of this series due to demand. One is an English language learning version, and another is the next steps, or a couple of other areas that people would like to have additional programming. So we're excited about that. All right, next slide. And together we can reach 1 million. The idea here is that working in partnership with our trusted partners over time, and letting our partners do what they do best, reading the needs, meeting the needs locally, and through your existing networks. We just provide the materials and support that you need. Next slide. Great. And then you can join the movement. That is the email and the website links. That's where you'll get your questions answered, a toolkit, and ways to onboard your learner. And then the next slide. Thank you. And if you want to spread the word for folks you know who do need access to programming, we're always happy to add to our networks of folks who want to support learners, especially in these trying times. Please provide feedback on what more you think is needed, or other ways that we could keep improving programs and services. And then, of course, share success. So let other people know that this can be done. There's a lot of fear for a lot of our learners, even for entering a remote learning or mobile learning program, and sometimes seeing somebody who's done it themselves is actually the best teacher. All right, I think that's it. So thank you, everyone, for your attention. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jess. And now Kristen from Connecticut is going to facilitate the Q&A. I'm actually also just going to pull up that slide that we didn't get to see clearly. There it is. And that has all the information about this challenge. I think it's an important slide. So I'm going to let Kristen take it away.
Thanks. Thank you so much. So one quick question that we wanted to get out there was people were interested in the new languages that will be added that you referenced.
Yes, I have a chart actually. Officially, we have languages for the COVID-19. We'll have 7 minimum languages at the end of, I believe, in the next month. And then we have a long list of requests. So please send us your requests. Now for other programming, we have English and Spanish, but we are able to add other programming in other languages. We have done that through our other program partnerships. So based on demand of high need languages, please let us know, especially in terms of which programs you think are needed in other languages. Please just reach out so it can get on to our roadmap.
Wonderful, thank you. Another question that was put out there by the group here. If students sign up as a part of the challenge, can we link them to our program so we can track their time for federal reporting?
That is not available on this one because it's part of a pool of 1 million users. Those program partners can reach out to us though, and we can figure something out.
Okay.
We have some new programs for crisis pricing and others that might work. Otherwise, we will continually update folks on how many users are making progress, etc. But it won't be at the learner level for our program partners.
And so if an individual student goes ahead and signs up and they're not connected into a program, they're self-directing themselves through the assessment and which classes? Okay.
Yes, and they're paired with a coach, their own coach.
Do we have other questions from the group? I have another one. Is there a nudging capacity that's included? Is that part of what happens for the people who enrolled?
Yeah, absolutely. It follows some of our best practices of nudging within the flow of a course, outside the program, and actually from live coaches, both automated and live.
All right. I am not seeing, yes, I'd love to hear more about the push text. Are those one way?
Well, we get feedback from every learner. So no, we could send and get feedback from every learner from our texting capacity. So we'll let you know what we get back from what we send as part of the 1 million challenge. Could be encouraging text we send to all. But from the push text to households to make folks aware, as soon as they get onboarded, they become essentially a CEL-Ed learner. And that becomes a two-way engagement over the lifetime on CEL-Ed.
So I would be curious about how it is the individualized support the students are getting, how that is then incorporated, or how you're envisioning that being incorporated back into programs if they're not, linked through that reporting or the dashboard. Are you thinking it would be? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think right now it would be with their essentially their relationship with the live coach they're paired with on CEL-Ed and their own learning pathway that they would be going through. So that's essentially direct to learner in parallel with our coaches.
Great.
Covered quite a lot. I really appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your flexibility. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Kristen. So before we wrap up, please do share any comments if you use the resources on the resource through the website. Also, feel free to email us if you have any questions. We'll be sending out the resources mentioned from this webinar. I'll be sure to touch base with Kathleen, Xavier, and Jess about sharing those links and or opportunities with you all. And we hope that you'll join us for our next webinar, which will be at some point the second week of June. So stay tuned. And thank you all so much. Bye.
Thank you.